Welcome to lesson 3.4, where we are going to talk about two main ideas. This first video is going to talk about end behavior of polynomials. Now, to determine the end, so let's review end behavior first. We did end behavior in the first chapter of the year, and we did it by looking at a graph. So, for example, let's say I had given you this graph right there. And then you needed to find the end behavior. And we always wrote end behavior like this and like this. Where the first one is as x goes to negative infinity, or the left, as x goes to negative left. And the second one was as x goes to infinity, or the right. And then we looked at the graph. So for this graph right here, as x goes to negative infinity, the left, what does the graph get closer and closer to? Well, 0. That graph is getting closer and closer to 0. And then we would say, okay, now let's go to the right. As the graph goes to the right, where is it going? It's going up to infinity. So that's what we did in the first chapter of the year. Now, the cool thing about end behavior of polynomials is you don't actually need a graph to know the end behavior. To know the end behavior of a polynomial, you need the highest degree of the polynomial and its leading coefficient. Add that in there, leading coefficient. So, there are 4 examples it could be, based on those two things, the highest degree and the leading coefficient. So let's look at these ones first. Let's say we have these ones where we have an even highest degree. So anytime it's even, x squared, x to the 4th, x to the 6th, and it's only the highest one. We only care about the biggest degree. So an even degree, and then if I have a positive leading coefficient. Anytime your leading coefficient is positive and the degree is even, it's going to look like this U shape. I usually call it the smiley face. That's my nickname for it. If we have an even degree, but a negative leading coefficient, then it's going to look like this U shape, which I usually nickname the frowning face. And this will hold any time we have a positive coefficient and an even degree. It will always have this general shape. Now, something to understand about this. The middle might look very different, and we'll see that in the next video. This is just telling you what the end behavior is doing. So let's write out our statements. As x goes to negative infinity, and as x goes to positive infinity for each of these. So once again, this is only telling you what the ends are doing, not what the middle is doing. The middle can be doing really wonky stuff, which we'll see in a little bit. This is just showing you what the end points are doing, the end arrows. So for this one, the smiley face, both arrows point up. So our end behavior is both going to go up to positive infinity. For the frowny face, both arrows point down, so both end behaviors are going to go down to negative infinity. Now let's do the next two. This one is when we have odd degrees. And remember, it's only the biggest, so I don't care if there's an x cubed and an x first. I only look at the biggest exponent, the degree. So if the biggest exponent is odd, and the leading coefficient is positive, then your graph is going to have this squiggly look to it. And once again, the middle could do different things. So for example, it could look like that. The middle can do different things. This is just telling you what the ends are doing. Now, I call this one dead worm, because that's what it looks like to me. It looks like a dead worm laying on a sidewalk. If we have an odd biggest exponent, but a negative leading coefficient, then we're going to get this squiggly shape. And once again, the middle can look different. This is just telling you what the ends are doing, which I've nicknamed the slide, because it looks like a really crazy slide. And same as before, I can now write out my end behavior statements for each of these. Okay, so let's look at this first one. The limit as x goes to infinity. So that's to the right. So as I look to the right, this graph goes up to positive infinity. Then I have as x goes to negative infinity. So that's the left. And as I look to the left, this graph goes down to negative infinity. And now I can do the same thing with the slide. As x goes to infinity, that's the right. As I look to the right, this graph goes down to negative infinity. And as x goes to negative infinity, which is the left, so as I look to the left, this graph goes up to positive infinity. Now, you'll see in the examples we're about to do, those are my only options if it's a polynomial, meaning the exponent is a number, not a letter. So let's do our first example right here. Example number 1. We are only looking at end behavior of this equation right here. So I need two things. I need the degree, aka biggest exponent, and I need the leading coefficient. So if I look at this equation, the degree, or the biggest exponent, is a 5, which is odd. For the degree, I only care if it's odd or even. The leading coefficient is the number in front of my degree. So in this case, it's a 6, which is positive. For the leading coefficient, you only care if it's positive or negative. That's it. So this is going to be a positive odd, which means this is going to be my dead worm. So I look over here, my positive odd, that's this one, dead worm. So if I know it's a dead worm, now I can write out my end behaviors. So this first one is as x goes to infinity, so the right, as I go to the right, my graph goes up, so positive infinity. And as x goes to negative infinity, so the left, as I go to the left, the graph goes down to negative infinity. And there's our end behavior. That's it. Let's do one more example of this. We're going to do number 3. I want you to start this one listing the degree, which is the highest exponent, and the leading coefficient, and then deciding what shape it's going to be. Pause the video, try that out on your own. Ready, set, go. Okay, the degree of this one, or the biggest exponent, should be a 4. That's the biggest, which is even. Remember, we only care about if the degree is even or odd. And the leading coefficient in front of it is a -1, which is negative. Remember, we only care about that one if it's positive or negative. So this is going to be a negative even, which is a frowny face. So I've got it drawn right here. And then I can do my end behaviors. So both of these ends go down to negative infinity. And we're done. That is end behavior of a polynomial. So you should be able to now go to your assignment and start 1 and 2. You won't be able to finish it yet. We'll finish it in the next video.